Yes, boys, back again with another video. Managed to get a nice trade today on the NASDAQ. Was a little bit choppy, but my profit ultimately got here, and I had to change my bias throughout the day as well, so I'm quite happy with that. So let me get into the trade. Okay then, so right into the daily chart. As you can see here, the previous day we had distributed down after taking this buy side liquidity there, so you can see the buy side. So for me, I was actually looking for shorts, so I did actually have the previous daily low marked out as a price point I wanted to hit, but as you can see, that didn't happen. So the target ultimately changed for me, and this was simply because we had distributed during the first half an hour of the session above this fair value gap here. This is where I was looking for my short, and it didn't happen. So as I was looking for shorts, the first thing I did was mark out the London range high, which was there. This was the liquidity area which I wanted price to reverse from. As well as that, the obvious 1 hour fair value gap, and then we also had a gap of the regular trading hours. So this for me was a big price point. This was a target for me, as well as these lows here, and then the obvious previous daily low, which I targeted before. So I wanted a short from here during after the first 15 minutes, where price had already manipulated, and then we could get that distribution down. However, we just got continued distribution. It left this portion unfilled, so I could tell for me the external drawn liquidity was the previous daily high. So into the 1 minute then. As I said, I had to change my bias. I was looking for shorts, but it was pretty obvious that order flow was bullish. We had that SMT divergence here with ES after leaving this first FVG unfilled. So that again is another drawn liquidity which price didn't want to fill. So for me here, during this macro period, this there was the first entry you could have taken on this fair value gap here. Put your stop underneath that swing low, and then obviously target the previous daily high. However, I missed that. Wanted to wait for the closure above this 1 hour fair value gap on the hourly, which we did get. You can see there how it closed above it. And because of this now is a balanced price range. We've delivered sell side, now we've delivered buy side. So this portion here, where this new imbalance is formed, can be left open. So it doesn't need to be filled. Price doesn't need to go back into this area. So that, to me, was a big indication that order flow was very strong. For my trade and my entry, I entered on the 5 minute fair value gap. So if I delete this there, you can see this 5 minute FVG here, which I entered on. More specifically, what I did was I ended up entering once this low got taken out here. So that was a short-term liquidity target for me, and we did actually have SMT divergence throughout this whole point here. ES was consolidating, NASDAQ was retracing. However, because I didn't enter within a macro period, you can see the accumulation phase hadn't yet finished. So we did actually come lower, and this was actually the new liquidity point there. You can see where I entered. So if I got my execution labels here, you can see on that candle here there where I got into the trade. However, price did actually come lower, came underneath the 10 o'clock candle low, which is where price opened there, and then it eventually distributed. And I kid you not, you can see there, I was about $1 getting stopped out, actually less than $1. That's the tightest stop loss, or the closest I've ever been to being stopped out, and just about being avoided. But as I said, this is why it's so important to trade with precision, because price didn't actually enter that fair value gap, which I previously marked, because it's a balanced price range, it doesn't need to. So my stop loss was perfect, the placement. So this for me was the proper entry there of this inversion, which you should have taken, because it's during the macro period. We've taken out that liquidity. We've got SMT divergence with ES. So you know that price is going to want to distribute, as price doesn't now want to go to these lows here and fill this gap. It wants to go to the high, which is up there. That's the target of liquidity now. And then you also had this order block there where price dipped into with this fair value gap, which could have been another entry. So there were a lot of entry points which you could have taken. So it was quite a nice traded day, despite it being quite choppy for a lot of the portion of it, which is why I refer to the 5 minute, because you can kind of gain a better understanding of the order flow and missing out this choppy price action. And it was actually very clean. So if I use my standard deviations here and project price up, you can see your low risk buys was here, which was where this fair value gap was here during the early portion of the move. And then you obviously had the silver bullet hour here, which is where I entered looking for an entry between -1 and -1.5, and you could have had a couple there. got fortunate on my stop loss placement, but that is why I have a stop loss for that reason. And then price obviously distributed up and did actually end up hitting my SD range here, which is where I targeted for the day, but I got out there at the top of this SD range, so I'm quite happy with that. Very nice. There you can see roughly a 4.5 to 1 RR, so very good profits on that with 3 contracts. That is basically how you change your bias going into the day. You just got to use your common sense. You can see this gap's not going to be filled, which tells me that liquidity draw is higher, as during the first 30 minutes, price distributed straight away. It didn't look to manipulate and then distribute lower. It was pure distribution. So then you're just looking for a retracement point to get in on the next phase of distribution, which is what led price up here. So that is very simply how you do it. Profit for the day, $600, so very nice. I've not been bringing as many videos recently just because I've been getting stopped out at break even on most of my trades. So I've not been losing many, but they've just been break even trades. So it's been very frustrating, not been locking in my profits, but I did lock in a nice one today. Hopefully one more trade to pass this account, which can get later on this week and tomorrow. So yeah, catch you in the next one.